Pencil Kings, 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 Pencil Kings.
You never know when the right time is, so just do it.
All right, it's Wednesday, so it's time for the Pencil Kings podcast, where we talk to artists from all over the world of all different skill levels and disciplines and get them to tell the story of what kind of the world looks like through their eyes and hopefully dig up some insights and action steps that you can take to help you with your own art journey. And today we are talking with Kevin Chin, who I'm going to just let Kevin, why don't you tell people the 1 minute overview of what you do and where you're at, and then we'll dive into, Kevin's working on some really cool things, some offline things, which I think is really cool. And so we'll dive into that. But what's the 1 minute overview of kind of what you do and who you are?
Okay. Well, I'm Kevin. I'm a senior concept artist at Kings Isle Entertainment here in Austin, Texas. We do MMO games and mobile games.
Awesome. And where did you come from? Are you an Austin native? I know it's an amazing town. I've been twice. And one of the cool things about Austin that I heard from a friend there is that Austin has like a festival going every single day of the year. Like there's always something going on all the time.
Something happening every weekend. It's pretty crazy because it's like 100 degrees right now. It's always something happening. But no, I'm from Detroit originally, Michigan. Yeah.
And so when you're growing up in Detroit, I'm not sure what it's. Well, obviously now Detroit has been through some tough times, but
yeah,
I'm not sure.
I'm
not sure if I've ever heard of a whole lot of art or entertainment industry things happening in Detroit, and I feel like it might be a little bit like where I'm from, in Winnipeg, where there's a little bit happening, but nothing. There's not what I would call like a scene there. In Canada, the scene is in Vancouver or Toronto.
Yeah, like entertainment-wise, yes. Right now, I went to an art school there called College for Creative Studies, CCS, and it was for illustration. You're right about Detroit not having much of an entertainment, like films or video games related or animation related industry. So that is why I moved away. But that's how I started. I grew up in Michigan and went to CCS for illustration originally. And during my time there, I discovered what concept art was, watching like Lord of the Rings, behind the scenes stuff. I was like, well, I want to do that.
And so did you move right after you finished school, or did it take you a little while to change locations?
So I had a really cool bunch of guys and girls that we all knew we wanted to do concept art over regular illustration. We were trained to do editorial illustration, New York style, or just working advertising basically. But we all knew we wanted to do concept art. And some of us, got jobs at Midway, but some of the other guys, we moved to California because we knew that's where it was, LA. And we got jobs out there, working in games because at the time, maybe 2004, 2005, the video game thing was kind of booming at the time.
Yeah, definitely. And so when you moved out west, did you have a job already, or did you guys just kind of band together and get an apartment and everyone was hitting the pavement? And
sort of like that. I crashed at people's couches for a few months, and it was a kind of a strange story. I basically just took all the money I had left and I moved and just to see what happened, and job hunted for a couple of months, and then I ran out of money and I had to go back. Well, I had a few interviews, but by the time I ran out of money, nothing came up, and I moved back to Michigan, and I was ready to just kind of find a part-time job and make more money just so I can go back out there again 6 months later or something, But funny enough, 2 weeks later, a company that I interviewed with months ago just said, "Are you still available?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll take this over, part-time holiday work at GameStop."
And so were you in Detroit when that job offer came through, or were you just about to move back?
that was after I had moved back and like flew back to Michigan, and like I was ready to just say, well, maybe next year, So it's kind of crazy how things work, and I actually found out the backstory of how I actually got that job actually was that someone else that originally was hired like got a better job out at Lucasfilm. So I was the guy that replaced him. I was like, wow, thank God.
Awesome. I really like that story, and I feel like if somebody's listening and they're in school like you were and you have some good friends, that you guys must have had a blast when you were all living together and everyone's just getting started. I find that time is so magical. These guys that I met in college, and we had, like-minded, goals in life. We wanted to be concept artists, and we were just guys in Detroit, and it's just like, what? This is crazy. Like, we're doing this. And, if you find them all, like, they're doing some pretty awesome stuff right now in the industry. So it's kind of crazy. It's just, we all had similar, like, we're in this together, guys. We're doing this. Okay, so that's sort of like where you got your start. But what I'm really curious about, and what I think is really cool that you're doing right now, especially from my time working in video games and seeing a lot of the artists, is that your coworkers often have things that they want to do, and there's people who, you're working creatively or professionally, or maybe you're a hobbyist but you're really good, and there's that next step of taking to selling your own merch or printing your own things out, and going beyond just the one piece that you print for yourself sort of as a proof of concept, but then you never take it any further than that. And so I think that you're in a very unique group of people that's like the 1% of professional artists who are, like, I always thought of myself as a production artist or a commercial artist, not so much as a fine artist. And I see a lot of people who had these dreams of like, one day I'm going to book a table at the Comic-Con and sell my work, but it never happened. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I know anybody who did it. I've interviewed people who have. So I'm curious about, well, first of all, what you would say to people who are in that position where like, I one day I'm going to do the thing at Comic-Con. Would you say, yeah, go ahead, do it. It's an amazing experience. Like, it takes a lot of work, and you're going to have to give up some things in order to make space for it, but it's completely worthwhile? Or would you say, no, just keep doing your thing unless you feel like 1,000% you're committed, then do it? What would you say to those people who are kind of on the fence? It's strange right now because I'm at a job where there's not much overtime, there's not much crunching, and I'm left to have my weekends to myself, or have my, after hours to myself. And it's like a lot of free time, and I could do a lot of other social things, but there's always this, dream of like, hey, maybe I'm going to work on this story of mine, or, maybe I've got a children's book I want to make or stuff. And obviously take those ideas, go to conventions, and, put yourself out there. I think you have to be at that specific spot in your career where you're just saying, you know what, I'm ready for this. So that's what I would say. But also, like, I would say you never know when the right time is, so just do it. Yeah, I think that's the big thing, that there's never really a right time. There's like I've heard the saying is like, when's the right time to have a child? It's like, never. It's never the right time to have a child. It's either you want to do it and you just do it, or you don't. I mean, you might want to save your money a little bit, save some money for, can I afford this convention? Can I afford, getting prints done? Or can I afford the time to make pieces for my portfolio to print, I guess? Like, there's things that you need to plan first. Obviously, don't, like, jump at something. Well, I tend to be more of a jumper. Okay. And I remember there was a conversation with some friends like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I told them, well, I'm going to China to start a video game studio. And they all told me that I was stupid. But I just did it. And I think, in hindsight, I would have done a lot more planning, or at least tried to find someone who had done it before. But you learned a lot, right? Oh, yeah, I learned a ton. Yeah, and it sets up so many things. Like, that's where the growth happens. Yeah, both ways you definitely will learn a lot of stuff fast. So I'm curious about what you said about if you have the budget to go to a convention, because there's all these reasons why people would say, oh, I can't do it. And I can't do it because it's going to cost some money to print these things, but they never get past that point of just hitting that roadblock. Like, they never go and investigate. But what is a decent budget for going to a convention if you're just starting out?
I mean, don't go crazy. Don't go crazy and like have a ton of stock of art. I mean, yeah, maybe bring some, because most of the time, all the stuff that I bring, I'd say not many people are going to buy stuff. They might check it out, or you'll find like the real hardcore fans of your work. They're the ones that are gonna buy it. So yeah, but in terms of like these artist alley tables, they cost money, and then that's the real expensive part, I think.
And there's really no way to get around the art, like having a table. Either you have one or you don't. And if you don't have a table, then you're a conference goer. You're not a conference.
Yeah, I mean, there's cool. You can like network and stuff. That's fun too. But for me, the thing about conventions and me, when I started, it was about seeing whether or not people responded to my art. It was almost like a social experiment, just to get myself to get out and put myself out there, put myself and my art out there, just to see, is what I'm doing, is that something that people like? Do they like my art? Would they be willing to buy it? So that was like a really huge experiment. And like, I guess like you were saying, like, I literally just jumped and said, we'll see what happens.
Okay, so once you made that mental decision that you're going to see what happens, did you get stuck at any point, or is it just this is going to happen and you just got really busy? Or could you sort of tell the story about that? Because I'm really fascinated, because I feel like I'm a bit of a chicken, right? Like, I would like to do it, but I've got all these mental hangups, and hearing how other people have done it, regardless of your style or your skill or medium or whatever, it's just really helpful for me, and I hope for other people that I take some of the strength that you have, obviously, of having done this, and that I can kind of borrow from that if I want to go down that path myself. You know what?
I have to say, it's really tough. It's really tough because, like, I'm a guy that, that's coming pure out of a pure passion point where, I've got my job, I've got my day job, I've got my cushy salary that's like protecting me. But now I'm jumping into this territory, conventions, and, creating my own content and like putting it out there for everyone to see. I mean, that I'm jumping into that territory, and it's scary for sure. And, my first convention, I don't think I really sold that much. And for a little while, I don't think I sold that much either. And, it was more of like, it's a huge mountain that I had to climb. And for some reason, I just kept telling myself, just keep climbing, just keep going and see, because this is really coming in like out of like passion for my heart, just getting out there, showing my work, and just meeting people that did like my work. I think that was the most rewarding part of it. So maybe that was what I was just kept looking for, is some kind of acknowledgement, like I was doing this for a reason,
Okay. I think, what you're saying, I think I've heard that from quite a few people. It's often said in different ways, but it's like acknowledgement, or they want to know that what they're doing matters, or that someone appreciates it, and that's more important than the money often. I
mean, for your day job, like you get paid to do that, so sometimes you don't get the kudos, or you don't get the cookie, but because that's expected of you. That's your day job. That's your professional. That's what I do for a living. So sometimes you don't get the pat on the back, and that's fine because that's expected. But sometimes, you do this personal stuff, you see all the stuff on ArtStation, it's like, why am I doing this? Is this worth it? Is it something that, people like? And, I think conventions is a great way of seeing if people do like it, if people do want to buy it, or have it framed and put up on their house, in their walls.
And do you remember what you brought with you to that very first convention when you had your first table?
I remember I had pieces that I'd done previously for like art galleries, so they were not fan art. So like a pulp crime horror type of poster that I did for a gallery show, and some other fan art that I did, but it wasn't much, and it wasn't like I had discovered my look yet, you know. But yeah, it was really just me scrounging up like what portfolio pieces I had, or like illustration pieces that I might be able to turn into prints.
Okay. And if you were to go back and give that, earlier Kevin a little bit of advice for the first convention, obviously you don't want to overwhelm anybody, but what's like one or two things you would have done differently for that first show that you went to?
In terms of like conventions and shows, I still don't think I've mastered it yet, you know, because there's a lot of people that do have these insane like setups, you know, like PVC piping and like big, like 10 feet tall setups that I don't know, for my taste, it's kind of gaudy, you know, but for like the normal people, like the normal public, it might catch their attention more than, I have vertical banners that kind of just roll up, and they're kind of like standees that advertise like, you know, my name, my website, and some art that I do. But it's a huge spectrum of different setups. But my setup when I first started was just something glued on foam core on an easel. It was just really embarrassing.
Well, that could be something that if you were to go back, maybe that's something that you would change. You would say like, okay, well, maybe do more prints or do less prints, or spend an extra week preparing, or don't prepare too much because you just have to do it the first time. That you're going to make so many little mistakes. And
I think that's good advice. do some research, you know, see what some people are doing for their setups, and you'll learn on the way. Because for me, I think when I was starting to do that stuff, it was like every convention, it was like, I like how that guy's presenting his book, or I like how this guy's presenting his posters. And you try to incorporate, maybe assimilate that into like your presentation next time. And I don't know if that sounds bad or not, but it's basically like I'm learning how to present myself in a way that, you know, can better the way people see my art, I guess.
No, I think that's the game. Like if you knew how to grab that fan in the most, excuse the terminology, but the most intimate way possible, where you really like touch their heart or touch their mind or their soul or whatever. If we could all figure that out, man, we would do that, you know, like right off the bat.
And that's the thing, like most conventions, it's about fan art, and you can't really please everyone unless you're this machine that can like do a fan art piece of any and every intellectual property out there, which, you know, some properties I don't even know. I don't even like some of these shows that are out there, but I know it's huge, and I can't bring myself to do. There's that whole conversation about fan art and people selling fan art, so I don't.
Yeah, I think that's like a whole podcast we can do at another time. But I will throw this out because just to give people an idea, if they sort of like niche things that Kevin's talking about, I didn't know that there's this group of people called bronies, and they identify with. And when I first heard it, I was like, "What's a brony?" I was doing some research online, and it came up as a Facebook group. I was like, "What is a brony?" And then I looked into it. I was like, "Oh, interesting. The people that like My Little Pony." And when you think about that, if you hadn't heard of this before, you just think, "Oh, well, you know, it's like little children, probably more skewed towards females who are little girls who like this cartoon." No, that's not what bronies are. Bronies is like the adult, and I don't mean like XXX adult, but just like adults that like the show. And if you're curious about it, there's a trailer for like this bronies documentary.
There's a documentary, yeah.
I feel like it paints it in a very good light, because when I tell people about this, they're like, "What is this? Was that some kind of weird?" And I don't know. I only saw the trailer, and I was like, "Okay, there's just there's these fan groups for everything." And it's really fascinating that there's these super fans of all these different things that you would never think about, you could never imagine it, but when you see it, you're just like, "Wow, okay, I like doing art and I like doing fan art, but I would never, or I could never see myself doing fan art of that style or in that genre or whatever." So to wrap things up, what's the final verdict here? Obviously, you're still going to conventions, and we've talked about how you just grow so much by kind of getting outside your comfort zone, and you meet all these new people. Well, I guess like I think for people, it's just JFDI with, just bleep do it is what I say with my friends. And if it's something that you want to do, you can always start really small. And of course, you're not going to know everything when you get started. Do a little bit of research, but don't kill yourself or create this big monstrous task, and then just go and try it out, right?
Yeah, I think I've noticed a lot of like students in like art schools are doing these type of things just to get themselves out there, and I think that's cool. Like, I mean, obviously they're still, in school, and they're still figuring out what they want to do with their art, whether or not they're a professional concept artist or just an illustrator, doing children's books. They're still discovering what they're doing, but they're at least doing something with it, and I think that's pretty cool. All right, well, I feel like that's the perfect place to wrap. So, Kevin, okay, where can people find you online? Where are the best places to go to find your stuff? You can find me on all the social media sites at Kevin Chin Art. Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, my Facebook. That's my personal Facebook. My art page is Scratch My Chin Art. Well, I was just looking at kevinchinart.com. Oh yeah, I think everything is my portfolio website. Yeah, everything's linked from there. And for anybody listening, if you would like to see an awesome example of how to lay out your website, I was really impressed by the resume and just everything, how you had it laid out. I thought it was awesome. So awesome, great job on that. And it's a really good example, I think, that people could follow. And we'll have show notes for this, as well as links of different things we've mentioned over at pencilkings.com/podcast. So thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciated really diving into the mindset of going to conferences. And if somebody's listening, and because of this, you do go to a conference, send me an email, and I will send you some kind of Pencil King swag. I don't know what it is because we don't have swag yet, but we will make something specifically for you because I want somebody to go to a conference, and I promise it will be cool. So thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you for having me. Yeah, and we will be back next week with another episode of the Pencil Kings podcast.
Scope demands patience, skill, years of practice.
You talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.